Some nights are unforgettable in a good way, while others you try hard to forget but can't. This night was like the latter half. It's in my mind forever until I hit the grave. This happened in 2014. I was 20 years old at that time and in my second year of college. It was October 30th, and I was sitting in the library waiting on my friends to talk about our plans for Halloween. I was listening to music, scrolling through my iPod Touch, when my friend Reggie tapped me on the shoulder to get my attention. We both gave each other fist pumps. I took my headphone off and said, "Hey, what's up? How was class?" "I don't understand the point of taking a stupid lit class when my major is criminology," said Reggie. "Well, electives are kind of important," I replied. "I guess it gives you a break from your core studies to explore other interests. I mean, I'm enjoying this political science course even though I'm studying anthropology." "That's because you're a nerd," laughed Reggie. "Seriously though, why can't intramural sports be considered an elective?" "Because, you doofus, that is an extracurricular activity. You're playing for enjoyment and not learning a thing." "God, Reggie, for a guy who's studying to get into forensic sciences, you think you had some critical thinking in you." "Bite me, Zach," said Reggie in a raised and annoyed tone. The librarian passed by our table and held her finger to her lips, making direct eye contact with us before walking away. "What was that, a warning or something?" said Reggie. "Don't know why she's acting like we're kids or something." "We're sharing the library with other students who are also paying tuition to be here, so I guess being loud in a quiet space is a tad disrespectful for those studying," I explained. "What are you, a 40-year-old man?" taunted Reggie. "Geez, I'm sorry, Dad. I'll keep it down." "Shut up," I replied. At that moment, Tanya and Willow walked up to our table. "What are you guys bantering about now?" asked Willow. "Oh, nothing," said Reggie. "Just how geeky Zach over here knows everything." "Knows everything or just has common sense?" I replied. "All right, you two. If you both can't relax your macho attitudes, you'll both get a timeout," chimed in Tanya. The girls both pulled out a chair and sat down. "So," said Willow, "now that most major tests and papers are out of the way until mid-November, I thought I'd call for a meeting to organize some much-needed fun." "Hell yeah," said Reggie with excitement. "Thanks for the enthusiasm," said Willow. "Now Halloween is tomorrow, and I'm so over the dorm parties. It's fun in the beginning, with all the pictures and casual chats with people we probably won't even see after we graduate. And then, a few hours later, what happens? Everyone is drunk or high, puking everywhere, or blacking out." "I second that motion. I'm definitely over that scene," I said. "What were you thinking instead?" "You all know Wisconsin has plenty of horror grounds set up relatively close to each other. I was thinking we go to one of them and put ourselves in an interactive experience," said Willow. "Like with people dressed up in something creepy, chasing and jump-scaring us," asked Reggie. "Exactly. It'll be like us in our own horror movie," said Tanya. "I'm down," I replied. "Let's do this thing," said Reggie. "Woohoo!" he blurted out. His woohoos echoed in the library. I could see the other students shift their heads to our table. Many gave us scowls. The librarian quickly walked to our table and stared directly at Reggie, saying, "I guess one person ruined your visit here today. I'm going to ask you all to leave." We gathered our bags and our belongings and walked out of the library. "You truly are such an embarrassment, Reggie," said Willow. "Ah, you know you love me," said Reggie. "You're not my type," replied Willow. "You know what, Reggie, if we were actually in a horror film, you would be the most hated character," I said. "Doubt that," said Reggie. "It's true," said Tanya. "Your loud-ass voice would have the killer find us within 5 minutes and murder us all." "Ouch," said Reggie sarcastically. "That hurt." We walked to the parking lot to Willow's 2007 red Jeep and drove to a nearby sushi place. Willow and Tanya didn't live on campus. They stayed at home in Rochester, Wisconsin, and traveled nearly 40 minutes every day to the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. Reggie and I also lived in Rochester, but thought living on campus would be cool, making memories, as they say, one for the books. But truth be told, if Reggie had to commute, he would never make it to class on time because he would always put his alarm on snooze and sleep in. If it wasn't for me taking that responsibility and waking him up, he would be flunking right now. Man, did I wish I actually stayed at home and commuted with the girls. It would have been worth the travel. I would have better cooked meals by my mom instead of buying food for most days. I was a terrible chef, and I didn't have the patience. Why bother wasting my time? We each ordered the manager's special. That came with shrimp tempura, 2 maki rolls of our choice, a drink, a choice between seaweed salad or miso soup, and for dessert, a choice between mango mousse or vanilla ice cream. "All right," said Tanya as she took a bite of her dynamite roll. "Let's get back to the plans right before Reggie got us kicked out of the library." Everyone except Reggie laughed. "Like I was saying," said Willow, "Wisconsin has a lot of horror grounds dedicated to Halloween. I was thinking we'd check out the one called The Hills Have Eyes. I hear it's pretty spooky and close to the woods. I'm assuming they have people hidden along there for extra scares." "I'm 100% in," I said. "Great," said Willow. "The thing is, the place is about 24 minutes away in the city of Franklin, but I was thinking to stop by my place in Rochester and grab my Halloween costume." "Okay, so basically we will be driving past the grounds to go to your home city and then coming back," said Reggie. "Basically," said Willow, "if you guys have to stop by your houses, I'd be more than happy to take you." "I'm cool with that," I said. "My mom will be home that day anyways because she has to take my grandma to a dialysis appointment. It'd be nice to see her briefly." "Well, I guess I could stop by my folks' place too," said Reggie. "Okay, it's a plan," said Willow. "My last class finishes at 1:30. What about you guys?" "I have one 2-hour class at 8 a.m. I'll be free after that," I said. "I have a class at 11:30 to 1:30, said Reggie. "I have an online class at 10 a.m. to 12 p.m., said Tanya. "Great, looks like our afternoon is freed up," said Willow. "Reggie and Zach, I'll be here in the parking lot at 2 p.m. sharp." And with that, we paid for our food, and Willow dropped us off back on campus. That night, I was going through my anthropology readings when Reggie asked, "What are you planning on going as for Halloween?" I think I'm a little too old to dress up. Besides, shouldn't we be in something more comfortable if we're going to be running and screaming at the event?" "Where's your Halloween spirit, Grandpa?" teased Reggie. I gave him a stare and said, "Okay, Mr. Hippin' with it, what are you dressing up as?" "I'm thinking I'd go as Leatherface from the Texas Chainsaw movies. He's a badass." "Suits your personality," I said. "You chase everyone away with your annoying self." "Oh, you're so funny," said Reggie. "Maybe you should go as a comedian. Better yet, a boring comedian." "Reggie, we could insult each other all night," I replied. "I have a few old costumes back at home. I'll pick something out tomorrow." I then went back to studying while Reggie lay in his bed eating a bag of chips. The next morning before I left for class, I spent the usual 20 minutes trying to wake Reggie up. Even though his class was at 11:30 and it was already 7:45, Reggie took a while to fully wake up and get his day started. He was slower than a snail, I swear. Reggie yawned loudly and said, "Dude, I'm awake, you can stop shaking me now." I told him I had to leave, otherwise I'd be late for class. I had 10 minutes to rush to the humanities part of the building, which was on the southeast side of campus. The 2 hours flew by in class. I left the lecture hall and went to grab a soda from the vending machine. I sipped on it as I walked back to my dorm. Reggie wasn't in the dorm, but his bed had a backpack with things roughly packed. I assumed he was getting ready for a mini trip tonight. As I was heading into the bathroom to take a leak, I was startled by a deformed face jumping in front of me. My instant reflex was a punch to the face. I quickly realized it was Reggie in his Leatherface costume. "Ow," he moaned, "you clobbered me in the eye." He took off the mask and there was red puffiness around his eye. "Dude, I'm sorry. It was an instant reaction to protect myself," I said. "There seems to be swelling." I went and got an ice pack from the mini fridge and placed it on his eye. "Shit, that hurts," he complained. "I'm totally going to have a black eye thanks to you." "Next time don't try to scare me like that then," I replied. "Noted," said Reggie. He then grabbed his bag, said "see you in a bit," and left for class. I put my phone to charge while I packed my backpack with a couple of mini flashlights, my GoPro, and other things that we might need on this immersive horror experience. I made myself a cup of hot chocolate and watched some Judge Million. Even though she was old enough to be my mom, she was young looking and quite attractive. About an hour later, my phone started ringing. I picked up my iPhone 5, which was connected to the charger on the counter. It was my mom. "Hey, Zachy," she said. "I got your text. I was a bit tied up this morning taking your grandma for her usual dialysis appointment. So you're coming down today?" "Yeah," I replied. "My friends and I are going to a sort of interactive Halloween haunt thing around Franklin, but we were stopping by our city to grab some costumes and whatnot." "Oh, how fun," she exclaimed. "What time will you be here around?" "I'm not sure. We have 3 other houses to visit, and mine is the last on the route." "Sounds great, honey. I'll make something for you and your friends that you can eat after." It's okay, Mom, don't go through that trouble. We'll probably eat out or something. Nonsense, she insisted. We are Italians. It's in our nature to feed people. If you didn't have to go anywhere, I would have invited your friends over for dinner. I laughed and said, I know, Mom. I know you would. I better go now. I have to get ready and meet my friends. I hung up the phone and zipped my backpack up. I walked towards the front entrance of the campus. Willow had texted that her and Tanya would pick us up from there. As I walked, I saw Reggie leaving the food court area with a bag of burritos from Taco Bell. Reggie, I yelled, and he turned around and started walking towards me. Do you need anything from the dorm? I asked. No, he said. I already took my bag with me to class, just to save some time. Looks like you brought yourself some lunch, I said. Ah, he said, not just for me, for all of us. Kinda like a peace offering from yesterday. I guess I was being a little extra, he smiled. I agreed with him. We stood in front of the pickup spot and saw Willow's Jeep pull in. She honked jokingly at us. Reggie and I got into the car and drove off. What's in the bag? Said Tanya. Glad you asked, replied Reggie. I bought us some burritos to snack on. Aw, that's sweet, said Tanya. Are you sure you aren't trying to prank us and wrap something gross inside? Come on, I swear, he said. I'm being nice. Willow, I got you a bean burrito because I know you don't eat meat. That's thoughtful of you, Reggie. Thanks, said Willow. He passed everyone their burritos and everyone silently ate for a bit. Tanya then turned on the radio to 99.1 The Mix. The host introduced a new special on the show called Short Horror Stories. That's pretty cool, I said. Before television, radio dramas were popular in the 1920s. It's nice to listen to stories rather than watching a movie sometimes. Willow and Tanya agreed, while Reggie had to add his 2 cents. Here we go again, another geeky reference from the teacher here, said Reggie. I'm not sure if you know, but audiobooks and podcasts kind of are this generation's version of that time. Buddy, can I catch a break? I was just saying how nice it is for radio to be trying this new way of storytelling. Why do you have to hype up all the time? Do you want another black eye? Willow looked at Reggie through her rearview mirror. Whoa, Zach, you did that? Yeah, 'cause this idiot thought he would scare me while I used the bathroom. I hope you can handle your reflexes where we're headed, said Reggie. The other people are getting paid to scare you. Guys, said Tanya. We seriously don't want to deal with you two taking jabs at each other all night. That will suck out all the fun. Just one more back and forth insult and we'll just drop you at your houses and go alone to the Hills Have Eyes exhibit. You'll have to find your way back to campus. I apologized to the girls on the behalf of Reggie as he seemed to have a sour face on him. The rest of the drive was quiet as we listened to the scary story. It was about a trail that ran along a lake and a lady was killed and thrown in. She would emerge once every full moon and take the soul of a person who had walked past the lake last. Very eerie. The first stop was Willow's place. My parents are still at work, she said. Why don't you guys come in? It'll be a while for us to get dressed. We all got out of the Jeep and walked to her front door. You guys can chill out on the couch. Tanya and I will be upstairs changing, she said. Reggie saw a bucket of candy, and just like a kid, he ran over and grabbed a few pieces. Hey, I said, those are for the trick-or-treaters. I'm only taking a couple, he replied. Did you want one? What's the choices, I asked. There's Snickers, Mars, Caramel, Musketeer, Reese's, Smarties, O. Henry, and some lollipops. I'll take the Snickers. I'll grab you 2, he said. These are minis. I bet you can't just eat one. Reggie walked over to the couch and sat down next to me. He grabbed the remote and turned on the TV for background noise. So, I'm pretty ready to get spooked tonight, said Reggie. It's different watching a movie and getting scared than being there in real life. I'll probably pee my pants. We both laughed. It was 3:45 when Tanya and Willow came downstairs. They were dressed in a skirt, a dress shirt, a tie, knee-high stockings, combat boots, and their makeup was pale, with thick dark eyeliner above and below their eyes. What are you guys, a scary version of Britney Spears from her Baby One More Time video, laughed Reggie. No, said Tanya. Zach, would you like to take a guess? Some kind of gothic schoolgirls, I replied with uncertainty. Close, said Willow. Maybe this will ring a bell. The girls turned to each other and started to kiss, like literally making out. Hey, said Reggie. Is there room for one more? The girls both stopped kissing. You know we don't swing that way with your kind, said Tanya. Did you forget we're lesbians? Reggie laughed uncomfortably. No, I just thought that in that moment you might make an exception. Yeah, no, said Willow. Not even in your dreams will that ever happen. Wait, I got it, I said. You're both those girls from that early 2000s one-hit wonder song, All the Things She Said. You're absolutely right, Tanya exclaimed. So, whose house are we off to next? I asked. Well, we were going to stop by Tanya's house to pick up her paycheck from work, but her parents dropped it off here this morning, said Willow. Yeah, I kinda need to stop by the bank to cash it for tonight, said Tanya. Why go through that trouble, I said. I can spot you today and you can pay me back later. Tanya thanked me. We then left to go to Reggie's place. We arrived 15 minutes later, and he told us to wait in the car. It'll only be a few minutes. Reggie walked into the house and came back with 5 plastic grocery bags. He signaled with his head for Willow to open the trunk. He put the bags inside the storage compartment and sat back in the Jeep. Looks like someone's parents loves them a lot, said Tanya. Yep, said Reggie. They fill the bags with all kinds of snacks because they know I like to eat all the time, even when I'm bored, he laughed. It was 5:30 p.m. when we headed to my place. I texted my mom that we were 10 minutes away. When we got to the front of the house, my mom was outside waiting for us to come in. My mom gave me a long hard embrace and kiss on the cheek. Oh, honey, it's so good to see you after a long month. Seems like you've been gone forever, she said. Everyone filed into the house. My mom met my friends quite a few times, so she knew how to keep up a conversation. It wasn't awkward. I'm gonna head upstairs to pick out a costume, I said. As I went to my room, I can hear my mom casually asking what each person was supposed to be. My room was just the way I'd left it, except it was dustless and smelled like lemon pledge. My mom must have been in here working on her cleaning magic. I opened my closet door and sifted to the far back where I kept my costumes. I had the typical Scream costume that most 90s kids owned. Too overplayed, I thought, plus with the mask I won't be able to see as great. I had a Spider-Man costume, but spandex in the cold might not be the best choice. I had a dress shirt and pants with suspenders and glasses. Maybe I shouldn't go as a nerd. I mean, Reggie would probably poke fun at me the whole night, as me dressing up as myself for the one day I could be anyone else didn't make sense. I finally found a Ghostbusters costume that I had bought a few years ago when I started university, but opted out of wearing that, and to be cool, dressed up as Michelangelo from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles series. I changed into my costume and then went downstairs. It was like walking into a final reveal or something, like when a girl enters the room on her wedding day and everyone stares and cheers, except with me, it was like everyone broke into the Ghostbusters song. I rolled my eyes and smiled. Reggie was like, cool costume, but why didn't you go as Professor Ross Geller from the TV show Friends? He has the same profession as you're studying for. I'm studying archaeology. Ross is a paleontologist. He studies dinosaurs, I said. Oh, my bad, said Reggie. The girls and my mom giggled. It was so typical of Reggie to make a snarky, backhanded comment. But joke was on him because he looked stupid with his question. I don't know how he manages writing tests. He must really carefully take 5 minutes reading each and every question. All right, Mom, we better get going, I said. We have to make it in time to listen to the rules before we explore. Of course, I understand, she smiled. I was telling Zachy that if you all didn't have to go out tonight, I would have done a nice dinner with all of us, but instead I cooked and packed everything for you guys to enjoy tonight, or even for breakfast tomorrow. Thanks so much, said Tanya. Home-cooked meals are always the best. Why do you think I live at home and not on residence? Reggie interrupted. So, what did you make? Well, we have cured meats, chicken cutlets, 2 different kinds of veggie pasta because Willow, I know you don't eat meat, pork meatballs, garlic bread with cheese, and some Caesar salad without the bacon. My mouth is watering, replied Willow. Zachy, my mom said, I also packed you some necessity items along with snacks. Great, thanks, Mom, I said. My mom hugged everyone goodbye and told all of us to stick together and stay safe, and that we should text her once we reach back on campus. The drive to Franklin, Wisconsin was a blast for the most part. The music was turned up loud, and I could feel the vibration in my throat. Reggie then pulls out a water bottle and took a few chugs and then made a weird face. You want some? He asked. His breath reeked of alcohol. Nah, I'm good, I said. I kinda want to remember the experience. Hey, anyone else want a sip? Tanya did a waterfall of the drink. Oh, smooth tequila, she said, and then gave it back to Reggie. Reggie held out the bottle to Willow. Care to have some? No, you dummy. I'm the designated driver. I'd rather not. Okay, more for me then, he said. Reggie, man, you don't want to get wasted before we get there. If they know you're drinking, they might not let you in, I said. I'll be fine, he said. I know my limits. We exited the freeway, and it wasn't long until the city began disappearing into a wooded area. We could see some house lights in between, but for the most part, our headlights were the only thing guiding us. "Hey, imagine if your headlights stopped working when you had to drive in the pitch dark," teased Reggie. "That's not even funny," Tanya snapped back. "Well, Reggie, I would literally make you get out of my car and make you put the spare bulbs in. Hopefully no supernatural thing gets you in the process." Reggie went quiet. We finally pulled up to the gravel part of the entrance to the Hills Have Eyes exhibit. There were at least 80 vehicles parked. Seemed like tonight was a full house. The exhibit sat on 10 acres of land. There was a huge house with large tents attached to it, at least 40. That must be what we would walk through while the actors jump out and scare us. We got to the front booth and paid for the tickets, which were $55 apiece. The man behind the plexiglass told us to go to Tent A, where there was going to be a quick breakdown of rules. We walked to Tent A, which was about 20 feet away. A woman dressed in a sexy fallen angel costume welcomed us. She asked us if it was our first time there. We said yes. She gave us a quick breakdown of how long the Hills Have Eyes has been running and how dedicated the employees are to give customers the best experience. They always come back for more, she said. She then went on and told us to respect the actors and try not to attack or hurt them, as we can be held accountable and charges could be laid. That the carrying of weapons like knives or guns were prohibited. If seen, they'd be confiscated and a police report would happen. There was zero tolerance for drinking, as the chance of injury is high, especially with the uneven walkways. She took out a Sharpie and wrote Group 27 on reflective stickers. She then wrapped one around each of our wrists. "Who is going to be a group leader?" she asked. Everyone turned to look at me. "I guess it's me," I said. The attendant handed me a whistle. "In case an emergency occurs of any sort, we use this whistle. We have medical professionals and police set up along this site. They will rush to find you and help you," she said. I put the whistle, which hung from a string, around my neck. "Any questions?" she asked. We all shook our heads no. "Okay then, have a spooky time," she grinned. We walked out of the Tent A and made our way into the house. It was dimly lit, but we could see most of our surroundings. As soon as we got in, we could hear shuffling, and then a mummy ran from one corner and tried to startle us. A dead bride then popped up out of a coat closet and grabbed Reggie's hand. He didn't even flinch. He just said, "How you doing, gorgeous?" I was pretty sure Reggie was a tad drunk. We walked into the kitchen and a zombie child crawled out puking blood. The fridge was open and a pregnant dead woman was eating severed arm. We walked into the living room and a vampire man was drinking blood from a woman's neck. He made eye contact with us and began to run towards us, but we backed away from the room and went into a bedroom. There was a girl from the Exorcism movie sitting on a bed vomiting like she was in one of the scenes. "Okay," said Reggie, "this is actually kinda late." Tanya and Willow agreed. "Well, we just started. Maybe it will get better as we go," I said. "We did pay $55 for this." "I'm just not feeling it," said Willow. "Maybe you need a drink to let loose," said Reggie as he pulled out the water bottle out of his bag. "Seriously," said Willow, "put that away. If we get caught with this stuff and I get in crap with the law, I'll kill you." Reggie took another 2 big chugs, closed the cap, and put the bottle back into his bag. "Look, guys," he said, "I have an idea to make tonight more interesting, more of a real experience." "How?" questioned Tanya. "Before we came here, my inner investigator decided to go online and do some research of any crimes that may have happened here." "And?" said Willow. "And right outside of this house, beyond the land, there's a wooded area, and inside that is a house where someone died a horrible death." "Shh," I said. "Maybe the actors who are hiding can hear our plan. How do we get there?" "If we exit through the back door where the kitchen is, we can just walk straight down, go through the woods, and we'll be right there." We went back to the kitchen where the zombie woman was eating the severed arm and the kid was lying in his own puked up blood. "Don't they get tired of doing the same motion for hours?" asked Reggie. Suddenly, Freddy Krueger jumped up from behind the kitchen counter. "Oh, that's new," said Reggie. We opened the back door which led outside. There was the beginning of the tent maze which would lead us back to the front of Tent A after we had completed the walkthrough. But instead, we snuck along the exposed grass pathway, which was a bit narrow until we were in an open area. There was no security or other workers around. The only light we saw was the moon. The woods was about a 4-minute walk ahead. "So, Reggie," I said, "why don't you continue your story?" Reggie began. This happened about 30 years ago when this town was in its earlier stages. There is evidence for what happened, but some parts of the story have become an urban legend, and I think ring much more truer than what the evidence pointed to. You see, there was a husband and wife who were very much in love. He worked at a lumber store. He was a pretty buff guy, carrying wood all day and helping customers. His wife had her own business. She made baked goods and sold them at the local bakery for profit. Things were smooth sailing for a while, except they were trying to have a child for quite some time, but it was just difficult. It wasn't happening. Then one day, the wife, whose name was Shirley, was dropped off by the bakery owner's son. They were the same age, 23. Her husband Johnny, who was about 9 years older, was looking out the window. He was a protective guy and didn't like the fact that some other guy was bringing his wife home. Johnny confronted Shirley and told her to not let that happen again, or he would have to do something about it. A few months passed and Johnny returned home from work to find Shirley and Mitchell, the bakery owner's son, together in the kitchen. It was one thing dropping off his wife, but it was another for a man to be in his house with his wife, and that made him see all kinds of red. Instead of politely asking Mitchell to leave, he punched him in the face and told him to get the hell out of his house, that if he ever saw him, he would kill him. Mitchell left the house with a bloody nose. Johnny then slapped Shirley and asked her what Mitchell was doing in his house. Shirley told him that her baked goods were selling well at the store and that Mitchell had come over to give her a hand to make some more. Although that appeared to be the truth, Johnny didn't believe his wife. He suspected she was having an affair. He warned Shirley that she was on thin ice, and even though he didn't want to act irrationally or hurt anyone, he wouldn't hesitate if it came down to it. That day, though, Johnny changed. He was always suspecting his wife of sneaking around his back. He didn't know how to go about it as he didn't have proof. While at work, he was paranoid that Shirley was wrapped in another man's arms, cheating. That maybe, because they were having a hard time conceiving, she decided to leave him for someone who could give her children. Johnny began hearing things in his head, telling him to kill his wife, to end their painful marriage. If he couldn't have her, no one could. One evening, Johnny was cutting meat with a cleaver when Shirley said she was going to take a shower, and that when she got out, she would make them some tea and they needed to talk. Johnny thought the worst thing, that maybe Shirley would hand him divorce papers. His rage kicked in. He cleaned the cleaver and then sat in the living room waiting for Shirley to come down. Shirley walked down on the left side of the double staircase. She was in a light pink chiffon long-sleeved gown. Her hair was open. She walked into the kitchen and made 2 cups of chamomile tea. She then brought it into the living room and left it on the table. She crouched down next to the armchair Johnny was sitting in and looked him deep in the eyes. She had so much love for him. At that moment, Johnny took the cleaver from behind and hit her straight in the neck. Shirley started spewing blood through her mouth as even more gushed out of the side of her neck where the cleaver had hit her. She then bled out and died. Johnny cleaned up the mess and then carried her body to the river, which was a 20-minute walk. He didn't want to risk it taking his car because the police could track down his kilometers and he might be arrested. At that time, there was no street lights, so he was doing it in the pitch dark. He dumped the body and then walked back home. The next day, someone found her body and reported it. Of course, the first suspect police questioned was Johnny, the husband, and then looked in the house for evidence, but couldn't find anything substantial that would lead to him being the cause of his wife's death. However, Johnny did mention that perhaps Mitchell was behind it, as him and his wife were spending a lot of time together. Mitchell was questioned, and out of fear didn't accuse Johnny of the murder, although in later years, Mitchell released his side of the story to the press. Johnny thought that maybe someone had just broken into the house while he was not home and attacked his wife. The police couldn't find any more suspects and ended up closing the case. However, here's the chilling part. An autopsy was done and Shirley was actually 3 months pregnant. A DNA test was completed and the father was in fact Johnny. As the days passed by, Johnny became more and more depressed and crazy. He claimed to see Shirley walking down the staircase in the same clothes she died in and hearing her voice in his head tormenting him. In the middle of the night, he also heard the cries of his unborn child. Too much to take, 8 months later, he drank cyanide and died. Reggie concluded the heartbreaking story with, "Technically, we're going into a place that is wickedly haunted. We were now in front of the house that the tragedy had occurred in." "As you can see, this place is abandoned," said Reggie. Tanya tried to push open the door, but it was locked. "Guess we're out of luck. We can't get in," she said. "Un momento," said Reggie. He picked up a large rock and threw it at the window, which shattered it completely. "Reggie, this is illegal," said Willow. But that didn't matter. We all ended up crawling in through the window. It was curiosity that took us in. We were now in the living room where Shirley was killed. Everything was still in the house, but the air was heavy and dusty. I got goosebumps. "Do you hear that?" said Reggie. "It's a baby crying." "Shut up," said Willow. "You're full of it. That's probably the alcohol talking." All of a sudden, I heard a wailing, like a woman was crying. "Guys, did you hear that?" I said. "It sounded like a woman crying." They all shook their heads no. "Is the Ghostbuster sensing something?" laughed Reggie. The woman's wailing got louder, and Reggie just stopped in his tracks. "I heard that." "Me too," said Tanya. "Same," replied Willow. We slowly walked to the front door where the staircase was. We couldn't believe it. It was the apparition of Shirley. She was midway on the staircase. She looked down at us. She could see us, and we could see her. Her feet were hovering slightly above the ground. She told us, "Get out, get out, get out." We inched back towards the door. I almost peed my pants. Tanya and Willow clung together. Reggie was swaying back and forth. I don't know if he thought it was an illusion because he started to walk towards Shirley's ghost. "Guys, I think it's some kind of holographic thing." We told him to come back. Suddenly there were footsteps coming from the other side of the staircase. Reggie gave a dazed look to the other staircase. Emerging from the hallway was a man. His steps were loud thuds. He was wearing jeans and a white undershirt. He was very muscular. You could see straight through him. He resembled the description of Johnny. In his hand was a cleaver. The cleaver, though, wasn't transparent. It was floating in his hand. Johnny looked angry. The cleaver shot out of his hand and flew down and sliced into Reggie's shin. Reggie fell back and howled in pain. I ran to grab him up. Shirley's ghost slowly disappeared. Johnny's ghost started to float down towards us. Willow opened the front door as quick as she could. Tanya and her ran out, and I put Reggie over my shoulder and ran outside. The front door shut behind us. I told Reggie I would have to take him off my shoulder once we got beyond the woods, and he would have to try and hop on one leg. He was crying in pain, but I guess he was able to handle it a bit more better because he was under the influence. If he was sober, I don't know if he would have any tolerance. We were halfway to the tents of the Hills Have Eyes exhibit when Reggie said he needed to be put on the ground because he had bled out a lot and he was tired. I remembered I had a whistle. I put it to my mouth and kept whistling until a group of medics and a police officer found us. I went with Reggie in the ambulance, and Tanya and Willow drove and parked their car and visitors at the hospital. The police took all of our statements and asked us what happened. We told them that we had actually left the site to a house right behind it, a house where a murder had occurred in the past. We were questioned why we would do such a dangerous thing when that house was off limits. There was even a sign on the door. We were actually trespassing. Then the hardest question came, which was how the cleaver got stuck in Reggie's shin. That not only was he drunk, but had a weapon. He went against the rules. It was so hard for them to believe a ghost had done that. Investigators went back to the house of Shirley and Johnny, but the reports were inconclusive. There was no evidence pointing to someone else being there, no footprints or fingerprints. We were not charged for trespassing, and Reggie's wounds were taken care of. That night we stayed in the hospital with Reggie, kept him company. He was shooken up, and so were we. His family also visited. They were hugging and showing their love and concern. The next morning, Reggie was given crutches, and Willow drove us back to campus. "I guess we're not going to talk about what happened," said Tanya. "Honestly, guys, I have the worst hangover ever, but I do want to apologize for my stupid idea in talking you all into going to that house. It's all my fault," said Reggie. We told him that it was okay and we were just glad nothing worse happened. Reggie said that he genuinely thought it was all a dream until the cleaver hit him. He then burst out crying. I comforted him as I knew he was gravely shooken up and needed the support of a friend. As we drove back, I looked out the window and pondered. It was a night that had us all excited to be going to a place full of tragedy and uncovering a mystery, but then coming out with our own scars. It was an experience like no other, because no one outside the four of us would believe our story. This would be our secret we would share for the rest of our lives. Hey Scary Story fans, I'm Suzanna Dutt, and thanks for listening to these short tales written and narrated by me. I hope you enjoyed them. If you have a creepy story that's fiction or non-fiction and would like me to share it in the next featured video, feel free to send it to me in the email in the description below. In the meantime, sweet dreams!